Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video. In today's episode we shall be doing another Know Thy Foe, the series where we take a look at one faction and analyse their strengths, their weaknesses and how to beat them. And this time we are going to be breaking down everyone's favourite green skin menace, the Orks. The first thing to say about the Orks is that they are a venerable and popular faction. When you go to a tournament, there is a good chance you will end up pairing off against them at some point. And because they've been around for quite a while, Orks do have quite a deep repository of units to draw upon. Combine this with many Orc players being individualistic and liking to put their own twist and spin on things and experiment with all sorts of crazy and wacky lists and combinations, it sometimes can be difficult to know exactly what you're going to face in an Orc list. But regardless of what the exact enemy unit composition is, you can be sure of a few common trends and tactics used by Orc players in the competitive meta. First and foremost, at their core, the Orcs are a horde army. This doesn't mean that they're going to be running full green tide or anything like that, but it means that they will have a lot of infantry and vehicles and just units overall that they can throw into the meat grinder. Orc units tend to be relatively affordable, and it always seems like there is more of them coming out of the woodwork, deep striking down, or coming on from strategic reserves. When you think you've beaten one Orc wave, be prepared for another one to come surging forth. On top of this, Orcs tend to be much faster and speedier than people expect them to be. If you look at the standard Orc boy profile, you might think it's just an infantryman slogging across the board at 6 inches a turn, but it's very unlikely that he's going to be doing that. More than likely, he's going to be mounted in some kind of transport, be it a truck or a battle wagon or something like that, and they are going to be zooming towards you as fast as possible. If there are 3 words that sum up Orc general tactics, it is speed, violence, and momentum. Speaking of violence, Orcs primarily do their damage in close combat. They've got a number of heavy hitters like mega knobs and also regular knobs, but don't underestimate things like their standard boys and beast snaggers. They have the volume of attacks and they have abilities that they can fall back on which make them punch well above their weight. You also want to be aware of some of the more hero hammer units they've got, such as the big beast snagger boss who's riding around on the giant squig. They've got a couple of different ones they can draw upon. They've got a named character and they've also got a generic one. So don't be surprised if you see a few of those big bosses bounding all over the place on those big squigs, just wrecking stuff and taking out big units as well as little ones as well. However, if you underestimate Orc shooting, you do so at your own peril. They have plenty of units that can put out a ridiculously high volume amount of shots. And if you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it's going to stick. The individual big shooters and little shooters, they're probably going to do little more than chip damage. But be aware that every time I've faced an Orc army, they've had some kind of crazy Daka combo on at least 1 or 2 units. One of the units to keep an eye out right now for is the Flash Gits. They seem to be just scything down anything from light to heavy infantry all the way up to vehicles as well. That covers speed and violence, but what about momentum? Orcs are going to rush you and they are going to put you under a monumental amount of pressure from the very beginning of the game. They may get a turn 1 charge. If they don't, they will certainly get a turn 2 charge. And it's going to feel like turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. You are just trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. And you might end up killing 80, 90% of the Orc army over the first few turns of the game. But unfortunately, you might still lose it because the Orc tactic is to basically rush you down, keep you busy, and whilst you're dealing with all these threats that are in your face, like these mega knobs and beast snaggers and trucks and everything else, whilst you're dealing with all the stuff that is in your line of sight, there's lots of little units like Storm Boys and Gretchen and other little scraplets that are picking up objectives, doing secondaries, and sitting on primary. Long story short, they're going to try and get an early lead on points, one that is so far ahead of you that by the time you've cleared their army, there's no way you can catch up. One more thing. I've mentioned a few units already, but I just want to go over some of the common Orc units you're going to encounter. First and foremost, more than anything else, you need to be aware of the truck. The truck might seem like a very innocuous vehicle. It's about 50-60 points, it can hold a bunch of infantry, it's very lightly armoured, it comes with a big shooter. Not much to look at individually, but you're not going to face individual ones. Any Orc player worth his salt, if he's going to take a tournament seriously, is probably going to run between 4 is the bare minimum. 6 is really what to expect. I'd say 5 to 6 trucks are auto included in every Orc list. They are the delivery system. They are what are going to allow the Orc player to go across the board so quickly and start getting in your face and messing you up. What the Orc player decides to put in the trucks is really up to them. But Mega Knobs, regular Knobs, Beast Snagger Boys, they are common occupants of a truck, and then backing them up and getting lots of points are going to be things like Storm Boys and Gretchen, cheap units that can either deep strike down or just boost from one end of the board to the other relatively quickly, just being highly maneuverable but relatively small and low threat, so instinctively you think to ignore them when actually they're the ones scoring the points. And of course the aforementioned flash gits are also something you want to be on the lookout. They're going to sneak up behind the initial wave, probably in their own truck, and just as you think you've got a handle on things, they're going to jump out and just do a huge amount of DACA and maybe tip the momentum back in the Orcs' favour again. Attention guardsmen, this is an announcement by the Departamento Militarum. Element Games is an official sponsor of the Mordian Glory channel. They offer up to 20% off Warhammer 40k and 10% off bolt action and other game systems. Use the link down in the description to save money and support the channel. Anyone not using the link will be referred to the local commissariat. Also, don't forget that if you use referral code TIM3921, then you will receive double store credit, saving even more money on your future purchases. That's all for now. Fallout! That just about summarises what the Orc strengths are and some of their key units, but what are their weaknesses? How can we send them back to the abyss from whence they came? To start, you need to kill them quick. The quicker you kill them, the better. How quickly you kill them will determine how likely you are to win the game. If it takes you till the end of turn 3 to do it, you might get a win. If you could do it in a couple of turns, just chew through all of that pressure, hopefully if you get first turn that can help. Or you go second and they come rushing towards you. It kind of works either way. But point is, if you can get through the bulk of the Orc forces in a couple of turns of shooting and combat using every lasgun, bolter and blade that you've got available to just clear, and you've got a chance of securing a good victory. But unfortunately, if you are still stuck chewing through them by the end of turn 4, you've almost certainly lost the game. Turn 3, like I said, is often too late, but you might just be able to put it back at that point. Depends on what secondaries they've scored, depends on how much of a lead they've been able to rack up. But it's all well and good me saying, well, just kill them quickly. But how can you do that when they're just swarming you and just swamping you, tying up all of your important units? All of your guns are just stuck in combat against Orcs. This is where screening and speed bumping comes in. A screen is something I've talked about before. It's where you push forward some sacrificial infantry to help push back enemy deep strikers and to try and stop their reserves from coming in exactly where they want them to. Speed bump is very much a type of screen. It's where you take a unit of, well, anything. It can be cheap infantry or a cheap vehicle. It doesn't really matter. But you take a unit that you don't mind losing and you push it as far forward as possible and you use it to essentially make a speed bump. A big movement blocking line, like in the guard, we'd use like 20 catachans to achieve this. A big movement blocking line that can cover a large amount of the board. And the Orcs, they can move up to it, but they can't move through it. Most of the Orc units that are going to be coming at you and doing the damage won't have fly. They won't simply be able to jump over. Those Storm Boys will be going around doing objectives more than likely. So those trucks are going to go zooming up and then just stop in front of the Catachans. And sure, the Orc player can charge them and stuff, or maybe he'll get out and charge them before he's moved, obviously. But the point is that where they stop is where those Catachans were. And with clever placement of scouting and speed bumping units, you can force the Orcs to charge in, kill a bunch of stuff that you don't mind losing, and then suddenly they're sat with their, well, whatever Orcs have for reproductive organs in their hands, and you're ready to blow them off the table. It might sound brutal, especially to a lot of non-guard commanders who might be listening to this, but you essentially need to sacrifice the lives of your men so that your tanks and other heavy hitters can just have enough time to clear through the Orcs without getting tied up. Also, don't forget that counterattacking doesn't necessarily mean just with guns. If you're a faction or a guard player who has invested in some combat capability like Strachan or some Ogrins, a very effective way of pushing the Orcs back is with a good counter charge. Remember, what they're trying to do is keep you off the primaries. Now, if you shoot an Orc blob or Orc mob off an objective, that's great. They don't have it anymore, but you also don't have it. But taking something like a big unit of Catachans led by Strachan, or a big unit of Ogrins, or if you're a Space Marine player, for example, big unit of Terminators or Deathwing Knights, you know what the big counter-attacking unit in your army might be, a good combat cruncher. You send that thing in, then not only are you going to drive the Orcs off that objective, but you're also going to capture it for yourself. This might help you get secondary points like Storm Hostile Objective, and it might also help you get things like Overwhelming Force, but most importantly is it puts the ball back in the Orc player's court, because now he's got to try and countercharge you back. And if you've got a particularly durable unit, I'm thinking like Deathwing Knights, they're pretty tough. The Orc player might not be able to shift you, and then you've kind of drawn that objective and you're starting to push back on the Orc plans to rack up that early lead. You don't have to necessarily win the primary points, you can just contest them to stop that lead from getting out of control. You might have noticed that a lot of the tactics that we've talked about for defeating the Orcs so far, like speed bumping and counterattacking, have actually been quite aggressive. That's because there is a tendency, there's an instinct to, when you see an army that can rush you, to try and backline as much as possible. It is an option, and if you can backline so that you can absolutely just gun them off the table in a couple of turns, and that's guaranteed, you've got the firepower to make sure that's always going to happen, you just have to avoid combat for 1 or 2 turns, then go for it. But in my experience, that is a losing strategy. By backlining, what you're doing is essentially giving ground. Sure, you're protecting a lot of your army, but you're giving ground. And by giving ground, it makes it more distance you've got to go to get back onto the primary. By giving ground, it means you're likely not to be in multiple areas of the board, so unable to score secondaries as and when they come up, like engaged in all fronts or deploy teleport to home or behind enemy lines. And also, it means that you're just essentially giving the initiative over to the Orcs. They're going to get to rampage around the board, and you're just kind of trying to hold your little area. Worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is to get intimidated and try and backline. What you want to do is have your shooter units, your punch units, the core of your army, the stuff that's going to be doing the damage, going to be doing the Orc clearing, have that a little bit reserved, but the units that you're going to be speed bumping with, the units that you're going to be driving back with and counterattacking with, those want to be up front and aggressive, ready to stop the Orcs in the middle of the board, because you don't want them to start getting over that midway point. You want to meet them in the middle, hold them in the middle, and then push them back. But here's the thing. Everything we've looked at so far has been kind of based on the assumption that you want to take the Orcs head on. That you want to meet their aggression with your valor and with your passion and with your own determination. But there is another way. The Orcs are going to try and pen you in, and in some cases they're going to want you to meet them in that open field so they can get more damage done. If you don't think that you have just fundamentally what's in your list or what your faction is good at, if you don't really have that capability of just meeting the Orks and fighting them in honourable, big, brawl combat in the middle, another way of beating them is to go everywhere that they don't want you to be. Don't take them head on. Hit them on the flanks. Move around. If they're trying to spread out across the entire board and sit on all of the primary, well, turn one, you use your maneuverability or whatever it might be that allows you to project force concentration, intense force concentration to one place in the board, and you delete one part of their army. And then turn two, you move on and you delete another part of their army. Then turn three, you move on and delete another part of the army. If the Orc player goes for big combat width, then what you can do is try and use intense force concentration to overwhelm his army and defeat it in detail. You can also have units that are deep striking in, being everywhere, hitting him from multiple areas at once. Sometimes taking the Orcs head on is not the right thing. If you have the ability to hit them one place intensely or try and hit them everywhere but from all sorts of different angles, that can be a great way of keeping the Orcs off balance and again stopping them from really swarming across the board like they are wont to do. Finally, Orcs don't like indirect fire. Whilst all of the knobs and the big boys are keeping you busy in the middle, it's going to be a 10-man units of grots sat on a home objective. It's going to be 5 storm boys who have deep struck down or jumped forward onto an objective in no man's land on the left. Something that's small and hidden and out of line of sight, trying not to draw too much attention to itself. Something that is very susceptible to even the most cursory of bombardments. You don't need to take big things like basilisks or manticores or whirlwinds if you're a marine player or anything like that. You don't need to take big stuff. Light artillery, a simple mortar pit will more often than not be enough to clear away a lot of Orc chaff backfield objective holders, and when you do that, it's just another way that you're stopping them from just getting 3 points. But that just about covers it. In summary, Orcs are a horde army that are going to hit you fast and hard, but if you can hold them in the middle and kill them quick enough, you should be able to keep up with them on points and then get ahead in the later turns. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Is there anything about the Orcs that I missed? Any units that you think need particularly highlighting? Let us know what they are. We can share that knowledge and we can all learn together from the comment section. Thank you so much to everyone that has watched this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.